Hello and welcome to this appointment of the BabyBrains Annual Conference. This year we are discussing the topic of freedom within reality. We look at limits and see if there's anything good about them. And parents are quite familiar with that idea because as much as we don't like limits for ourselves, as parents, we could even describe our whole mission as putting the right limits so that our child grows up in the best possible way. So it's quite an ambivalent field when we think about limits. Are they something good? Are they something bad? And we're very lucky because today we have Antonia Jordan-Barros here with us, and she's doing a whole PhD about that. So she'll be sharing some of the wisdom that we've gathered so far. So thank you very much, Antonia, for coming today, and welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this opportunity and to chat with you about my PhD project and our research that we're doing.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So you're doing a PhD at Birkbeck University in collaboration with UCL as well.
Yes, yeah, and King's College as well.
And
so across many universities.
Yeah, everybody in London is on you, Antonia. The rising star. So thank you so much. And could you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you ended up in London studying attention in children with and without autism, and in relationship with how they relate with their parents?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a PhD student. I'm actually in my first year of the PhD. So I just started a couple of months ago. And I ended up interested in studying attention, and specifically social attention in children with and without autism through my background in language development. So I've actually been studying how babies and children learn language for the past couple of years. And if you actually think about it, language is actually quite a complex skill, and learning their first words is actually a remarkable task that babies achieve. If you've ever tried to learn a second language as an adult, you know how hard it can be. I mean, English is not my first language, so I've had to learn that as an adult, and it was definitely very different than learning those words and things like that than a first language. So one thing that I found really interesting really early on is how language learning depends on these other cognitive skills, such as, for example, memory, but also definitely attention, and in particular, social attention. In particular, the way that babies learn the meaning of words. So, for example, if you think about the ball, like the word ball, that it means this, round object that babies can play with. Babies kind of build that association by being able to pay attention to the social signals around them. So, for example, babies are really good at interpreting social signals like eye gaze to kind of build these associations. So they, might be able to realize whenever mom is saying the word ball, she seems to be looking at this kind of round object in front of me. And then over time, they kind of understand that, the word, the sound ball maps onto that object that I'm looking at. So definitely attention and social attention has a huge impact on their ability to develop these skills. And why I became interested in studying that in children with and without autism is that, as you may know, children, like autistic children, have some differences in how they interpret these social signals. They have some difficulties in how they build these like language and communication skills. I think 70% of children with autism have delays in their language development. And I became interested in how these things kind of link together, whether there's perhaps a causal relationships, whether the differences in how they interpret these social cues is the reason that perhaps we see those delays in their language development. So that's kind of how, through language, I kind of ended up studying the social development of children.
Yeah, this is amazing. And this has happened throughout different countries, right?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I'm originally from Brazil and Germany. Then I came to England originally to do my undergrad in Manchester. Then I went to the Netherlands, and then I moved back to England. So I've definitely, have been in different environments myself as well, studying how children develop. And that's always been very interesting to see.
Having this cross-cultural take on how things work just gives so much, so much richness to the way we can observe things already and the questions we can ask.
Definitely,
so, yeah. And what an inspiring life story as well.
Thank you.
So now, if we want to talk about, because we're trying to think about the environment. And often when we think about the environment, we might think about things like places or food or noises or kind of things that are there and where that we interact with. And one of those things that maybe we don't immediately think about is relationships with our people, interactions with our people. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I should specify that maybe, when we developmental psychologists or developmental neuroscience talk about the environment, we kind of mean everything that is not biological. So everything that's not like genetic, that is not inborn with the baby, but everything that is around them. So that can mean the physical environment, like the home environment, the place they grow up in, things like that, but also the social environment, the culture they grow up in, as you just said, like this, there are definitely cultural differences, but also interactions with the people around them. So, how babies feel in the relationships with others, who they have around them, and the care they have around them. And it is, yes, so I do think that interactions with people are quite a crucial part of the child's environment. It is through interactions with other people that children learn about the world around them, learn about the social world, the social rules, how they should behave, what is expected of them, and so on. And actually, some abilities, for example, language, can only be learned through interactions with other people. So there's many studies that show that, for example, especially like young children cannot actually learn language just from a screen or just from watching TV, but that they really need these social interactions, these face-to-face interactions with the people around them, other adults or children around them, to build those skills. So that's definitely very important.
Yeah, and I think it's important for us as parents to stop a moment and think about that. What a role we're playing there, and and this is not to feel the burden necessarily.
Yeah.
Of course, it comes with some responsibility, but that responsibility, we have it anyway. What's really exciting is to realize all the potential that we have.
Yeah.
That if we kind of really take that in, embrace that, and use that space of potential that we have to interact with our kids in a way that really can support them. I think it's really liberating in a way.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, one thing as well, we were saying about the burden is of like always having to think about how should I interact with my child. Thankfully, babies are really good at kind of naturally reaching out for it. They babble, they scream, they use gestures. There's many ways that children will show you that, will capture your attention and will show you that they want some input or they want care. And I think as long as you're sensitive to those, you can kind of give the child the input it needs whenever it does need it.
Yeah. So being a parent is in the end a lot of a work of paying attention, observing, and responding to what's being asked.
Yeah.
And sometimes the response has to be a limit, or can be a limit, or sometimes the limit is perceived in what the child is giving us. And so, how do you think relationship can limit or contain potential development?
So I think that relationships are definitely a very big predictor of a child's development in many different ways. I think that in general, caregivers that are more in tune to their child's emotional needs, that provide more consistent care, more consistent input, and so on, will also have children with better cognitive skills, better social abilities, better language abilities, and so on. So I think it's important for the child to know that, I can count on my parent, or that they can learn to expect the same outcome if they do the same behavior. So if you think about how to limit the development, if you think about, let's say, if a child does a negative behavior, like if they throw food on the floor or something like that, and every time they do that, a child gives the same response of saying no or stop or something like that, that will kind of build the expectation that, okay, I should not do that, and will kind of also affect build a neural response in the child's brain of, okay, this is something I shouldn't be doing, and kind of strengthen that pathway. There's definitely research that shows that relationships can even affect brain development. So the early interactions between a child and a parent have been found to be linked to structural changes in the brain. So that means that they can change the size of certain brain areas, They can change the neural circuits and neural networks that are formed in the brain. They're also linked to later mental health outcomes. So I think in general, it seems that, the more a child has positive relationships with others around them, the more they will feel confident to explore the world around them, which then stimulates their brain. But also on the other hand, the more perhaps they experience stress in their early life or have relationships that are maybe characterized by more negative experiences, that can also then negatively affect their brain development and perhaps limit their development and growth as well.
Yeah, and probably many parents that are following us are familiar with that kind of ambivalence of knowing all the beautiful things that can happen through relationships and through interaction with our children, and then all the things that can go wrong as well. I think the worst regrets I have are all based in that space between one of my children and myself, and things that I might have done wrong, said wrong, not said, or said in the wrong time, And so it's amazing to think that there are people that are really studying that seriously. And so what's your approach? How are you going to achieve or try to achieve, work on your goal of improving parent-child interactions?
So I should first of all say that improving parent-child interactions is a very big goal. And I don't think that, just through this PhD project that I'm doing, we'll be able to fully, solve that, we'll be able to fully understand that. But my hope is to kind of give parents additional tools that kind of provide them with more information about their children and what's going on in their child's head and their brains. So kind of help them understand how their children react to certain behaviors that they do in order to help them become more attuned to what their child's needs and what their interests are. And we hope to achieve that by kind of taking a very individualized approach into how we observe the parent-child interaction. So, you know this as well. Every child is different. Every family is different. Every child has their own interest. And I think in our field, we're often limited to kind of having to analyze group level results. And what I mean by that is that we often conduct a study and we collect data from, let's say, 50 families, and we analyze them, and then we say, on average, girls seem to be developing more communication skills than boys. Or on average, parents that gesture more have children with larger vocabularies, and so on. And I think that can only be of limited use to an individual family because they can be very general. So I think, I hope that in my PhD, I want to test what specific behaviors or specific social activities an individual child finds the most interesting. So we will test that by looking at an individual child's brain activity, so their neural data, during an interaction with their caregiver. And then I want to test what activity, so for example, direct eye contact or singing together or playing together, and so on, engages that individual child's brain the most. So the child that I'm collecting the data from right there and then in the lab. And I hope that this will give us a little bit more personalized recommendations to the families that participate. So my goal is to be able to kind of say to the caregivers that come in, your child seems to be the most engaged whenever you did this or that to them. So whenever you were singing with them or whenever you were playing together and so on. I think that with development, as you know, there really is no one-size-fits-all solution. And what a ideal or optimal parent-child interaction looks like will be very different to every family, will really depend on the child and the parents. So I hope that with my project, I'll be able to help parents understand their individual child a little bit better.
I think it's really worth stopping a second and thinking about that, because as parents, we are so tempted to look for the solution that works for everyone. And we really want to hear that our child is normal and that he will develop exactly like everyone else. And that's a lie. That's just not going to happen.
Definitely. There really is no normal, there is no average child. Every child is unique in their own way, is on their own path.
Yeah. And I think that for us parents, seeing how much resources and money and time and intelligence researchers are putting into that makes it feel a little bit less frustrating, maybe, that we are struggling with our child. We have to figure out these things, and we don't always have like neural data at our disposal in the
Exactly.
homes.
Yeah.
It's something that we have to figure out using our social skills, our communication skills. So I think it's really encouraging for us to realize, okay, this is the way even science is starting to work, looking at the individual child, trying to understand what makes that person tick in particular.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's our work too. And it's hard and it's much more time consuming than taking averages or taking kind of directive advice from pediatricians or whoever else. It's really a work that has to be done one by one. And thank you for coming in and giving us some tools to do that. And this is potentially particularly strong and important for children that are particularly away from that average. That's,
Yeah.
so you're working with children with autism, for example, and so what's in it for them uh, from this approach? Like, what do they have to gain from scientists and researchers looking at them in this new way?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's two main ways that I think this will particularly be useful for people with autism. The first one is that there are already many studies on social attention in children with autism. However, the majority of them kind of focus on differences between autistic and non-autistic children. So then again, they may say something like, on average, autistic children seem to look less towards faces than neurotypical children, or they may be less good at reading social, like facial expressions or facial emotions than neurotypical children. And in this project, we are kind of hoping to flip this question around and ask, okay, if there really are all these differences in how autistic children react to social cues or enjoy social activities, then what social activities do they actually enjoy doing, and which social activities do they actually find interesting and fun? And I think that our research often comes from a lens of neurotypicality, where we kind of think about what children typically enjoy doing, or what they should find fun, or which abilities they should have at a specific age. And here we really want to shift away from that and not have any assumptions about what activities or things they would enjoy doing. So we're really open to seeing what the child's brain are telling us about what they find engaging with whenever they're interacting with their caregiver. So I hope that our findings will be of value to autistic people and provide parents of autistic children with answers into how they can engage their child's attention in the best way, away from assumptions of what the norm should be, or away from being limited by this neurotypical lens. Oh, and then the second thing, sorry, I said there are two things, right? The second thing is that there's also like huge differences between autistic people. You may know the term autism spectrum. That's because it really is a spectrum. And because we're using this individualized approach where we're really taking it on an individual level, analyzing child by child, I hope that the autistic families that participate will be able to benefit from that as well, that we're, again, not being limited by very general recommendations, but can really look at their individual child.
Yeah, and I think it's really valuable because it kind of moves us away from this idea of labeling people and then like all these self-fulfilling prophecies that can go with that.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and into giving us tools that help us to know people better. Yeah, maybe we need to use some words, but the words are just a pointer to something that to getting to know that specific person better with an open mind and with a kind of curiosity and willingness to discover and go sort of on an adventure together.
Yeah.
So and what about people with that are not autistic? So people that feel like they are kind of comfortable in their little case where they've been assigned to. Is there anything for them as well in this new approach?
Yeah, I think that the approach that we're taking benefits neurotypical families just as much as, and then also in the same ways than autistic families. So in my project, we will be looking at what activities children find the most engaging in both neurotypical families and families with autism. So we will also be getting data from neurotypical families that have no family history of autism. But I think even within what we call neurotypicality, being neurotypical, there's still a massive spectrum, and there's still huge differences between children. I think there probably are more differences than similarities in what a child finds interesting and engaging. So I think even within what, as you said, in that box of what we call being neurotypical, there's big variation, and even those families will, I think, benefit massively from understanding their individual child better, and they would also, I think, find it more valuable to have more personalized recommendations rather than just kind of general advice.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to conclude, do you have a story maybe of a limit that in the end turned out to be a strength?
Yes. I don't think I have anything from my PhD yet, because as I said, I'm still in my first year and I'm kind of just getting started. But I've definitely had a story like that in my master's. So as part of my master's, I had to do a 1-year research project that was going to be my master thesis. And I had written this beautiful proposal that I was super excited about, where we were going to investigate face-to-face parent-child interactions like baby and mom, and seeing whether if the baby's brain synchronizes better to what the mom is saying, whether that baby will also have better language abilities later on. I was super excited to do it, but my thesis fell during the COVID pandemic. And I was actually told I can't carry out that study because if us researchers were going to be in the lab with the mom and baby, the mom will have to wear a face mask to protect us. And immediately we felt like that's a bit weird for the baby. Like that's not really a natural interaction between a mom and a baby if she's wearing this face mask. So we kind of gave up on that idea. But it kind of started to get, so I had to think of something else to do in a new study for my thesis. But I actually then ended up becoming interested in this question. Why did we all kind of naturally feel like wearing a face mask would be very weird for the baby? Why did we feel like that would have an effect on how the baby is kind of interpreting this interaction, or is able to process the speech that they hear? So in the end, I actually ended up investigating exactly that. What is the importance of these kind of facial cues, especially the ones coming from the lips and the mouth, on the way that babies process speech and learn language. There were all these COVID babies that were being born during the pandemic, and I think many people were wondering what the effects of that might be on their development. And I ended up investigating exactly that. I looked at whether if you kind of block out these cues, if you hide them behind something like a face mask, whether that has any negative effects on how babies process speech. And thankfully, our results showed that there was no difference. At least for speech processing, it didn't seem to have an effect. Of course, we will need much more research to really understand the full effects of the pandemic on child's development. But I think in the end, I'm happy that I ended up investigating that. And it kind of like taught me that when you conduct science, even, if unexpected situations arise, like a global pandemic, that it's always good to, like, that kind of new interesting questions can arise, and you can make interesting observations even in those cases, and to always kind of keep an open mind about what questions you may ask and also what you may find when you ask them. So the results that come out of them.
Thank you so much for this example, because it's so telling, and I'm sure many parents can relate to that, in the sense that we have all those beautiful plans on how we want to raise our children, what we will be doing with them, and how we will be doing it, and who will be there, and all of these ideas that we have. And then life just surprises us. And your example is really beautiful, how to, things go differently, and we still remain ourselves. It kind of brings us to take out something from ourselves that was there all the time, but in this new situation, it can be expressed in a new, beautiful way. And so, I think for us parents, this is really, really valuable.
Yeah, thank you.
Antonia, thank you so much for this conversation today.
Thank you. This was really fun. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. And if it's fun for you, then we're going to call you back soon.
Oh, yes, definitely. I'd love to do that again.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.